Yo, I'm Yovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show, the final Lakers postgame reaction show for the 2023-24 season. The Lakers were eliminated by the Denver Nuggets 108-106 to lose their first round series in 5 games. LA had a chance to win at least 3 of these games. I think game 1 and game 3 were decidedly in Denver's favor late in the fourth quarter in those 2 games. But game 2, obviously, LA had a chance. Jamal Murray hits a buzzer beater. Game 4, LA ends up winning. And game 5, Jamal Murray also hits the go-ahead shot, and LA is unable to get a shot off, given they only have 3 seconds to go the length of the floor. They get it shot off right at the buzzer. It was a lot of commotion going on. A lot was happening at that point. So the Lakers season ends in the first round. And on the one hand, it ended to the team that they lost to last season. I think this was a more competitive series. Not only did the Lakers win, but again, they had a chance in at least 3 of the 5 games and went 1-2 in those games. And you could argue could have easily gone 2-1 or 3-0, if not for a possession here or there in game 2 or game 5. Now, on the other hand, that is not how sports work. That is not how the NBA works. That is not how the Lakers view things. There are no moral victories for the Lakers, and they have an important offseason coming up and several big changes potentially happening in terms of the head coaching position, in terms of LeBron and his future, in terms of the ripple effects of that. How does that affect Anthony Davis's future if LeBron no longer is a Laker? And then the rest of the roster. What happens with D'Angelo Russell, who has a player option? What happens with Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura and Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt, who are all sort of the tradable pieces if the Lakers are going to make a move, in addition to D'Lo if he does end up opting in, which he made it sound like he will not after his exit interview tonight. So I don't really want to focus on the game that much. I just don't think it really matters reviewing the game that much, given that the Lakers lost and the series is over and their season is over. I will quickly touch on the game right now, but I'm not going to be doing 3 takeaways specific to the game. If you were not on Twitter or social media after the game, I had a report with Shams Charania and Sam Amick at The Athletic about the future of LeBron James and Darvin Ham. And I don't want to spoil the story, although it is getting aggregated and it is getting spread everywhere. So at this point, you probably will know the spark notes. So on the topic of LeBron and his future, he obviously has to decide if he will be returning. Our sources told us that LeBron will likely play up to 2 more seasons in the NBA. Doesn't mean he's going to play 2 more seasons. Again, he's still deciding his future and will be thinking about things. But the most likely scenario, we were told, is LeBron returning to the Lakers, or if longer, than a 2-year deal. Regardless of what LeBron decides, though, the Lakers are open to extending and re-signing him. The Lakers want him back, and they are willing to give him upwards of $164 million for an extension or $162 million for re-signing him. So it's really up to LeBron in terms of what type of contract he wants and whether he wants to remain a Laker at all, right? But again, we were told that the most likely outcome is LeBron remaining a Laker. And another interesting tidbit from the story is that the Lakers are open to the prospect of Bronny James joining the team, whether that is in the draft or whether that is signing him. That, of course, is dependent on Bronny declaring for the draft, and we still don't know what his decision will be. I asked LeBron point blank after the game in his exit interview. The Lakers did their exit interviews after the game to avoid any potential drama with what was going to be reported post-game. So in LeBron's exit interview, I just asked him point blank, like, if and when Bronny does enter the NBA, is it your goal to play with him? And he hedged the question and didn't really give an answer, but his final sentence was, the fact that we're even talking about this is just really cool to me. So we'll see in the coming weeks what ends up happening with Bronny. But if he does enter the draft, there is a decent chance that he ends up on the Lakers. And then I think the biggest news of all is that Darvin Ham's future with the Lakers is in serious peril, according to multiple team and league sources. And there are several elements to this. The Lakers look at the Western Conference Finals last year. They look at what they felt was a successful offseason from a team building perspective. And they look at the in-season tournament and the start that they had, being a top 4 team in the West through the tournament. And they look at all of that and say, we are a team that should be at the top of the West, competing for home court advantage, competing to make a deep playoff run. And the fact that this team finished 7th in the West and lost in the first round and lost in the manner that they did, having basically been embarrassed by Denver for the most part with the 11-game losing streak and blowing game 2 and then ultimately losing in 5. All those factors they ultimately feel are at the feet of Darvin Ham. And going back throughout the season, that 3-10 stretch after the in-season tournament, had the Lakers gone 6-7 or 7-6 instead of 3-10, and we're talking about a team that is the 6th seed, maybe even the 5 seed, and not playing the defending champions in round 1. And that was how a lot of people around the team felt. And during that stretch, they experimented with 6 different starting lineups, including the all-wing lineups. They had a couple versions of it, one with Rui Hachimura as the 5th guy, one with Cam Reddish as the 5th guy, but they went 2 and 3 during that stretch. And the fact that they benched both D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves did not sit well with players, did not sit well with people within the organization, and neither did Darvin Ham's promotion of Taurean Prince throughout the season. And the fact that LA was under 500 with Taurean Prince as a starter, the fact that Taurean Prince had the worst plus minus on the team, the fact that LA was 28-8 in games that Taurean Prince played fewer than 25 minutes. And yes, there were obviously injuries, and the team acknowledges that there were injuries. Gabe Vincent missed 71 games. Jared Vanderbilt missed 53. Christian Wood missed the final 26 of the regular season and all the playoffs. Rui Hachimura missed 14. But the Lakers had their top 4 players, LeBron, AD, Austin, and D'Lo, all for at least 71 games. And with the exception of LeBron, Austin, D'Lo, and AD all played 76 or more games. So the Lakers' best players were relatively healthy. This was the healthiest LeBron and AD season that the Lakers had gotten in their 5 years together. And to finish as the 8th seed in the regular season and then win their way into the 7th seed, but then play the defending champions and lose in the manner that they did, they felt it was a coaching problem. And the fact that the players started to tune him out, the fact that he had the quote earlier in the season, living and dying with each moment, that did not sit well with the fan base. That did not sit well inside the organization. And there was a sense also that he tended to lose the press conference with quotes like that and certain things that he would say. And that is important in LA. And that's just a factor with being the Lakers coach. There's an extra level of scrutiny and attention, and you need to be able to handle that as in terms of your answers and the way you frame things and the way you discuss things. And another thing was accountability was a big issue with players in particular, where they felt that anytime there was a question about what could have been done better in a game, what could have been done better in general, anything schematic wise or any sort of peek behind the coaching curtain, oftentimes it was explained as it's on the play. The players can close out harder. The players can box out better. The players can play with more energy, with more effort. And it was often on the players and rarely on Darvin Ham and his coaching, his rotations, his lineups, his game plans. And even tonight, he talked, it's been a hell of a 2 years here. And he's like, we just had to stay healthy. If we weren't, if we were healthy, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And, my rotations get flack, but really it's about health. Health is the primary thing. And I agree to an extent. Jared Vanderbilt was supposed to be the starting small forward. Gabe Vincent was supposed to be the 7th man or even 6th man behind the starters. And then him and Rui as guy 6 and 7. But the decision to not only start Taurean over Rui, but play him double the amount of minutes of Rui in several games early in the season, to stick with that despite the data not supporting Taurean as the starter, despite showing that Taurean next to Austin and D'Lo wasn't working, and he decided to bench Austin and D'Lo. And I think that was one of the first moments where his future started to be in doubt in terms of, why is this guy benching our 3rd and 4th best players in some order? And why is that the solution compared to benching Taurean, who was supposed to be a bench player, who was signed to a $4.5 million deal? And it's not like he's having some career year where he's averaging 15 points a game, shooting 45% on three. Like, he was solid in a limited role and for his contract, but he was not playing at a starter level, and it really hurt the team. And the fact that they went 19-6 with Rui as a starter going into the playoffs, had all the success with Rui in the starting lineup. And Rui did not have a good Denver series. And that's what kind of makes this interesting in terms of the timing, is that Rui just had a terrible series against Denver. Torian had a solid to good series against the Nuggets, although his game 5 was also pretty rough. But as a season-long thing, the Torian issue was something that was brought up with multiple people within the team, multiple people around the team, also Cam Reddish, and just those guys being afforded certain opportunities that Austin and D'Lo and Rui and Max Christie and other players weren't afforded. And it was like, those guys, if the latter group messed up, they would get benched, or their minutes would be reduced, or they'd be pulled from a shift. And the other guys, it was like they were walking into certain roles and certain minutes that they didn't necessarily deserve. And one of the most confusing parts of all was that the Lakers touted their continuity all summer and into training camp. And it was all about the guys from last season. They re-signed Austin, they re-signed D'Lo, they re-signed Rui, they extended Vando, they brought in Gabe to replace Dennis. And yes, Vando and Gabe got injured at the beginning of the season, but even when Vando played in 29 games and he only played 32 minutes next to the other 4 starters. Rui only played in 6 of a potential 26 games with the other 4 starters before he became the starter. So it wasn't just the starting groups. It was closing groups. It was middle of the game groups, like just the front courts of LeBron, AD, Vando, LeBron, AD, Rui. They just did not play together that much, and it just didn't really make sense. So all of that combined with, again, the team blowing game 2, the team being a 7 seed, the team losing in round 1, the team losing in 5 games in round 1, all those factors have the organization reconsidering the head coaching position right now. They are reevaluating it. They're going to take, be it a day, 2 days, 3 days, however long, to reassess everything and really think about what is the future of the franchise, what does that look like. And LeBron will factor into it, AD will factor into it, the front office will factor into it. There's a lot that still has to be figured out in the coming days and ultimately the coming weeks. But for the Lakers, I think this is a big decision. And it's crazy that last year Darvin Ham helped this team make the conference finals. And I know that there were still a lot of fans that were upset with him and his rotations and some of the decisions, like starting Dennis Schroeder in game 1 against Denver, and just some of the various things throughout the playoffs and the regular season. And then he wins the in-season tournament, and the Lakers feel confident about the direction of the team. They're confident about their direction in the West, and the floor falls out from under them, and they really struggle for the next month, essentially, finally righting the ship as they hit that mid-January point. And from February 1st, they had the 4th best record in the West, the 5th best record overall, 3rd best offense. Like, they really hit their stride down the stretch. But it ultimately seems like it was too little too late for a franchise that considers itself championship or bust each season. And the fact that they have lost 12 of 13 games to Denver now over this past year or so stretch just doesn't sit well with management. So we'll see. Maybe they change their mind, but everything we have heard over the last 72 hours was indicating that Darvin Ham was coaching for his job these next few games. It was essentially going to have to win this series to save his job. And the fact that they lost in 5, I just don't think bodes well for him. Losing on another game winner like that's a tough way to go out. It's not on him, but even looking at this game, he didn't call timeout for almost 5 minutes in the 3rd quarter as Denver went from down 8 to up 3. And by that point, they had regained control of the game. They had the momentum. And LA eventually got the lead back at various points in the 4th quarter. But from that point on, Denver had the momentum. They had the crowd back into the game. And I think that was emblematic of some of the issues throughout the season in terms of the timeouts and players having issues with the timeouts. And the Lakers were low on timeouts. So that is one, if you want to make the counter argument, that they only had 2 timeouts after they took that timeout late in the 3rd quarter. But I just think that stretch was so pivotal. And the fact that it was an 11-point swing from, again, being up by 8 with about 8 minutes left in the 3rd to being down by 3 with about 3 minutes left in the 3rd. That swing ultimately proved fatal for the Lakers, and that was just And in texting people around the team, like that was just kind of another example of a Darvin disaster class in the third quarter and something that potentially cost the team. And then there was playing a bunch of small ball and playing a bunch of 3-guard lineups, smaller units with Torian at the 4 throughout the series, where those groups got killed on the offensive glass, lost the rebounding battle. And on some level, he went down playing the way that he wanted to play. He did make smart adjustments, and I think overall the rotation got better throughout the season, but it continued to be the issue of certain guys playing over guys that the front office and players felt should have been playing more, and some of the stuff with the game planning, especially against Denver, and throughout the season, the game planning with defending shooters and leaving shooters open, and the whole AD situation with AD and Darvin trading barbs in between games 2 and 3, like that was a bad look. And it was reported that the team was upset with Davis, but we reported that there were people with the team that were upset with Darvin and felt like he could have downplayed the situation, and instead he chose to amplify it and really put kerosene on it, and bring a lot of attention to agreeing to disagree, defending the coaching staff, and really just acting like a coach who did not have security and was not confident in his security. And clearly there was reason to be. And I'm sure on some level he was aware that he was coaching for his job at that point. But I still think it just fit in with the narrative that he did not take accountability publicly. And you'll see other coaches fall on the sword and say, tonight it was on me. I messed up with XYZ with the game plan, or I should have put this guy in sooner. I should have done this. And with Darvin, it was always deflecting those types of questions or putting it on the players. And that did not sit well within the locker room, and that did not sit well with important people within the organization. So that is how we got to this point. Again, we'll see what happens in the next day, 2 days, 3 days. It could be as soon as Tuesday morning. I think it might take a little bit longer. Again, heard conflicting things about that. It sounds like the Lakers have their decision made up, and it's really just a matter of getting this done. And they wanted to avoid firing him at the buzzer the way that Frank Vogel got fired at the buzzer in Denver as well a couple of years ago when he was let go to end the 2021-22 season. But that is the report. Check that out on The Athletic. If you have not subscribed, be sure to subscribe there and read. I'm still leaving some stuff out. There is a lot of details. We put a lot into this story, and it would really mean a lot if you read the whole thing and didn't just read the aggregation and the quotes that get pulled out of it. Let's get into our 3 takeaways from tonight. Takeaway number 1, and these are all going to be bigger picture takeaways, but takeaway number 1 is what this means moving forward. And I just outlined a lot of what this means. Number 1 will be what happens with Darvin Ham. Do the Lakers end up dismissing him and moving on? How quickly do they move on another head coach? Which coaches will become candidates? A name that is interesting to me is JJ Redick, given he is one of the front runners for the Charlotte Hornets job. He seems to be the hot name on the market. I think of Steve Kerr when he was picking between the Knicks and the Warriors. And I think JJ Redick, if he does not get the Hornets job or he does not choose to join the Hornets, I think he would be an interesting candidate. He's got LA ties. He used to play for the Clippers. He used to live in LA. And most importantly, he has a good relationship with LeBron James, given that they are currently podcast partners on the Mind the Game podcast. And that would be interesting, going from podcast partners to player and coach. And again, there's a lot of unknown factors in terms of, would the Lakers have interest in JJ? Would he have interest in the Lakers position, knowing all that comes with it? Would LeBron want him as his coach? Is LeBron going to be a Laker moving forward? Like, there's a lot that is going to go into this. And before the aggregation army comes after me, I'm just reading the tea leaves here and just looking at who's the number 1 coaching candidate on the market right now. It is JJ Redick. And if the current options are the Hornets, the Suns, and the Lakers, I think it is easy to talk yourself into the Lakers being the most attractive situation. The Lakers situation, I think you can make a case for and against it, depending on what happens with LeBron and what happens with the rest of the roster. But I think being in LA, coaching the Lakers, coaching potentially LeBron and AD, most people will sign up for that in a heartbeat. And I think that will be the top job on the market if it ends up becoming available. Then, as aforementioned, you have LeBron and his future. Does he opt in? Does he sign a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal? Like, what does he want from this situation? How does that affect the Lakers' plans? Like, if he opts in for an extra year, now you're kind of going year to year, and he has more of the leverage. But if he signs, for extension, it's got to be a little bit longer. But if he extends for like 3 years and maybe only ends up playing 2, or if he opts out and then resigns for a couple of years, like how does that shape the direction of this team? And if he is holding the Lakers' feet to the fire, so to speak, in terms of, I'm going to be here just one more year, you need to put the coach I want around, you need to put the players I want around, and tries to play that leverage game, then things get a little interesting in terms of, are the Lakers willing to play ball? And it seems like they are, right? Like, they are willing to give him, as we reported, whatever contract he wants. They are willing to bring in Bronny. So already they are acquiescing to some of the things that LeBron wants. And we will see again what happens with the coaching situation and what happens with the rest of the roster in terms of how far they're willing to go to acquiesce to LeBron. And then beyond Darvin and LeBron, you have D'Angelo Russell, who implied that he will be opting out because he has leverage and he had a good season in his eyes, and that he wants to use some of that leverage, and that he purposely signed and structured his contract that way for this opportunity. So it sounds like D'Angelo will not be picking up that option, and it'll be a matter of either re-signing with the Lakers or signing elsewhere, or maybe a sign-in trade. Then you have Max Christie, who was cut off 45 seconds into his exit interview to make way for LeBron. He answered one question about playing time and not really being able to contribute in the playoffs given the shorter rotation. He had a telling quote, in my opinion, about being disappointed that he didn't play and feeling like he could have helped the Lakers out, which I know a lot of Laker fans feel the same based on the YouTube comments and the Twitter replies that I get. So that was a viral quote on Twitter. Spencer Dinwiddie said that he wanted to remain a Laker if the Lakers would keep him, though he also acknowledged that this is a championship or bust organization, and that when things don't go well and they lose in the first round or lose in the fashion that they did, that they tend to make sweeping changes, and that big changes could be coming. And obviously it probably starts with the coaching staff, and then potentially some of the important pieces with the roster. Taurean Prince said he wanted to be back, which I don't think a lot of Laker fans love to hear, although maybe he swung some Laker fans over with his performance in the series, though again, based on his Game 5 performance, I don't think that was the case. Cam Reddish didn't speak at exit interviews. Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood didn't speak either. Jackson Hayes said that he has a lot to think about in terms of his future. So all three of those guys have player options for next season. They are vet minimum player options. I think the only guy that outplayed his contract was Jackson Hayes, although he also was a DNP CD in the first round, had a limited role in the first round. So I don't know how much of a market there's going to be for Jackson. Like, he's clearly a limited backup center. I think he can be a good backup center within a limited role, within limited minutes. But how valuable is that when so many teams have multiple bigs? He's not necessarily that bruiser type you could put on an Embiid or a Jokic or an AD if you're trying to game plan against the Lakers. So Jackson, I think, is probably still a minimum player, like might be a little bit higher than that. But outside of him, I think Christian Wood and Cam Reddish are both minimum guys. And depending on how they view their markets this summer, they both might opt in just because that is the safer bet than potentially not getting signed and then having to potentially go overseas or trying to figure out what you're going to do not on an NBA roster. And then there's the matter of how the Lakers build out the roster. We reported, and I've reported on here and on The Athletic before, that Trae Young is a name to watch. Now, we have heard conflicting intel in terms of the Lakers' appetite to potentially take on Trae Young, and apparently the room is divided. There are some supporting Trae Young and there are some against it. So we'll see how that shakes out. But there is, again, the third star route of going for a Trae Young, going for a Donovan Mitchell if Cleveland flames out, going for a Kyrie Irving if Dallas flames out, going for another star if there's a situation where that star's team flames out. Then there's the more middle path where you look to upgrade maybe the D'Lo spot, maybe the Rui spot, or just make a tweak to the starting lineup, make a tweak to the bench, and at least a couple of tweaks, and it's a more medium-sized, but you're running back most of the same core with some upgrades or improvements. And then there's the basically running it back, which is partly out of the Lakers' control. Like, if all the minimum guys opt in, LeBron opts in, and D'Lo opts in, or they re-sign D'Lo, they kind of are running it back, and Max will be a restricted free agent as well. Torian Prince will be a free agent. So some of the pieces might end up getting tweaked, but even then it would almost certainly be vet minimum guys. Lakers are not likely to have an exception, or maybe the mini mid-level exception. So the Lakers might be in a tough choice outside of making a trade, and they are going to be armed with their 3 draft picks, and we'll see what ends up happening around the draft. Do they end up making a trade? Like, there's a lot of questions and a lot we will be unpacking on this channel, on this show over the coming days and weeks. But I just wanted to lay all that out, and I'm sure there are topics and questions I didn't even think of. But this is what's percolating in my mind right now. Takeaway number 2 is what we learned. And what we learned in this series, to me, is LeBron James and Anthony Davis are capable of going toe-to-toe with arguably the best duo in the world in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And Jamal Murray was dealing with a calf injury. He was questionable entering this game. He's been banged up and not himself for basically the whole series, though he did hit 2 game-winning shots or 2 game-deciding shots. But LeBron and AD, you could probably make the case were the better duo in the series. I don't even know if that's controversial or not. I think Jokic was the best player in the series overall, but Denver had, I think, the first and fourth best players, and I'd put AD second, LeBron third, but the gap between Jokic and AD from 1 and 2 was smaller than the gap between LeBron and Jamal from 3 and 4. And of course, in crunch time, Jamal took over. He is one of the best closers in the game right now, if not the very best, when the stakes are the highest. And that should not be dismissed or overlooked. But I think the Lakers showed like those two together can still be a championship caliber duo. They need the requisite support. And this is where I think coaching and rotations and lineups come in, where outside of that 3-10 stretch after the in-season tournament, the Lakers won at a 52-win pace. With Rui Hachimura as the starting small forward, the Lakers won at a 62-game pace. So I think with the right lineups, with the right rotations, with the right guys healthy, I think health, of course, played a factor to some extent. I think this is a team that could have won 50-plus games and been battling for home court advantage in the playoffs. So I think that's where we learned some stuff about the coaching, maybe some stuff that we already knew, but certainly what was validated in this series, that the collapse in game 2 in the second half, the lack of timeouts at certain points, the choice to go away from Anthony Davis and instead target Nikola Jokic, and the offense just crumble from that point on. There were a lot of coaching mishaps over the course of the season, but also specifically in this series that I think cost the Lakers when the margin was so thin. I think we learned that AD is a gamer. He played nearly the entire second half with his left shoulder dangling and was not himself, was basically a decoy offensively, was not able to do much, but he still continued to play defense. He had a big block on Jamal Murray. He had several key defensive rebounds in traffic, and he gutted it out and he played through it. And that's not something he's always done in previous seasons. And I think AD deserves credit for playing a career high 76 games this season and gutting through multiple injuries at various points. And I think in the Milwaukee game, where he was a decoy in that fourth quarter after taking that charge on Giannis and hurting that very same shoulder. So AD, I probably should have mentioned it earlier in the show when I was talking about the game, but AD gutted that out, and he's a warrior. And I don't want to hear any of the injury stuff anymore with him. I think he slayed that this season, and it can always pop up down the road at future points in his career. But right now, I think AD just deserves nothing but praise and acknowledgement for the season that he had and his availability through this season. As for the rest of the roster, to me, there was a lot of confirmation in Austin Reeves. Even if his shot isn't falling, is still going to find ways to make an impact with his defense against Jamal Murray. His rebounding, D'Lo was very up and down in this series. I thought had a decent game. He did have a couple of key drives late, but he also finished 6 of 15 and just 2 of 10 on threes. So he was better against Denver. I still don't love him in this Denver matchup, and I still, again, have the same questions I've been saying for several games now in terms of him at the highest levels, the conference finals and the finals. I think Denver was able to target him in the second half at various points to get KCP buckets or to get him switched onto a guy and then that guy back cut or get an offensive rebound. I thought he competed better progressively, defensively, and on the glass throughout the series, but it still was a weak point for him. And Rui had a really rough series, was also 6 of 15, missed several point blank layups, missed several open threes. I thought bounced back nicely in the second half. Lakers closed with him. He got a few baseline cuts, 4 dunks, and finished strong, and was not leaving it up to chance of, I'm going to try and lay this up, I'm going to do this finesse. Like, Rui was dunking on people, but had a rough series, and especially defensively, I thought chasing and trailing MPJ, like, that is not Rui's strong suit. The Lakers didn't really have an alternative other than Taurean Prince, but he didn't have a good game 5, and he was also subpar on the glass overall, and could be targeted depending on the matchup defensively. So LA was in a bit of a bind, and that brings me to the final point of what LA needs roster wise. I think LA needs a better backup center at a minimum, if not a starting caliber center, and slotting AD at the 4 and LeBron at the 3 and going back to that 2020 model. I've been against it, but I'm finally coming around to, like, I think a reasonable outcome or a compromise would be just a better backup center who can play next to AD, can close games, can fill in for AD when he's out. The Lakers need a more reliable center than Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood behind AD next season. The Lakers need better two-way players, especially on the wing. They didn't have many, if any. I think one of the guys actually was Max Christie, and he just didn't end up playing. But Rui obviously defensively took on some challenges, but he was relatively limited in terms of what he could do against quicker and more athletic players who went around lots of screens. Taurean Prince went through some shooting slumps at various points in the season, and defensively was overtasked as a primary defender against both elite scoring wings and elite scoring guards, and that was just not in his wheelhouse or capabilities. Jared Vanderbilt showed a lot of progress offensively before his injury, but continues to be an offensive minus with the way that teams defend him. Obviously, his defense is all defense caliber when he's fully healthy and in rhythm. Gabe Vincent really was just his shooting and his offensive contributions. I thought defensively was really solid, especially in the New Orleans regular season game and playing game, and then the playoff series with Denver. With him, it's just about being healthy and being more confident and acclimating offensively. Spencer Dinwiddie was very up and down offensively. I thought defensively, for the most part, was solid, really embraced that role. I don't know what his future holds, but the Lakers need more two-way talent. And I thought Austin stepped up defensively over the final 2 months of the season and went back to the levels that he was at last year and the season before in terms of his defense, and had good moments against Shea and against De'Aaron Fox and Steph and now Jamal Murray. And he was defending those guys as well as he reasonably could. There was just clearly a limitation there in terms of how well he could defend them. But I think he did a solid job for the most part, and his numbers against Jamal in this series were actually really good. They were the best on the Lakers by a long shot. So two-way talent, though, particularly on the wing, with bigger wings, more athletic wings, stronger wings, more forceful wings. And that's the hardest position to find. It's the hardest position to find for cheap. So the Lakers probably have to make a trade to get that type of player, but I think it's something that they really have to look at if they're not going to go the 3-star build. And then potentially the point guard spot, right? Because if D'Lo leaves, whether he walks or is signed and traded or opts in and gets traded down the road, the Lakers will need a point guard replacement. Is that more Austin Reeves? Is that maybe Gabe Vincent as a placeholder starter, and you are running the offense more through Austin and LeBron? Is that JHS stepping up as a backup guard? There's a lot of unknowns there in terms of what happens with D'Lo and how that affects everything, but that's going to be a big thing. And we've learned that the point guard position is important for the Lakers. I think they're just looking for a little bit more reliability from it. And finally, takeaway number 3 is the Denver Nuggets are a special team. And I know this might upset some Laker fans, and if you don't want to listen to this Denver part, you can turn this part off. And I rarely recommend turning off my show or skipping ahead, but if you want to, I understand. I just want to say, in a lot of the conversations around this series, and of course, I'm coming at it more from a Lakers perspective because I'm the Lakers beat writer and I deal with Laker fans and I deal with the Lakers, and everything is Lakers. I just think what can get lost in this is that the Lakers lost to the better team. At the end of the day, this version of Denver is better than the Lakers. And yes, the Lakers led for almost 70% of the series. Yes, they had halftime leads in all 5 games. Yes, they had double-digit leads in 4 of the 5 games and had a 9-point lead in this game. So they were right there, 1 point away from a 5th double-digit lead. But the fact that they still lost the series in 5 games, and this wasn't a 6 or 7 game series, despite how much LA was up, I do think on some level speaks to the coaching and some of the decision making. But I also just think it speaks to Denver being better and Denver being able to play poorly. I thought Denver did not play a great series. And again, part of that goes to LA, and they deserve a lot of credit for the defensive game plan and execution and for the offensive performances of LeBron, of AD, of D'Lo in a couple of the games, of Austin in a couple of the games, and just those guys being able to keep this competitive against what is arguably the best team in the league, or at worst, the second best team in the league. And we'll see what happens with Denver in the next series against Minnesota. I think that's going to be a tough series for them. Jamal Murray's banged up, KCP's banged up. But I'm going to tie this back to the Lakers in that I think there's a chance the Lakers are the third best team in the NBA behind Denver and Boston. And they just so happen to match up with maybe one of the two teams that was better than them in the first round. And that's bad luck, right? And that is part of the sins of the season in terms of where things went wrong and the lineups and the rotations and the skids and different things that put them in a position to be the 7th seed and ultimately play Denver. But I think it can't be overlooked that the Lakers were competitive in this series. It was a competitive 5-game series. I know Laker fans don't want to hear that. I know other NBA fans don't want to hear that, but it was a competitive 5-game series. The Lakers were right there. And had there been slightly better health, had there been the starting lineup with more continuity earlier in the season, and then some of these alternate universes or alternate scenarios, like the Lakers are a 6 seed or a 5 seed or a 4 seed, and they're not even playing Denver until maybe the semifinals or the conference finals. But I just want to acknowledge that the Denver Nuggets are a special team. Nikola Jokic is the best player in the league. I think that they are the favorites to come out of the West. And there's no shame in losing to them again. Now, I think the Lakers should have won game 2. I think this should have been at least a 6-game series, if not 7. I think it would have gone 7 had the Lakers pulled this one out and it went back to LA. I think LA would have won that. This would have gone 7 and it would have been absolute chaos and madness. So I'm not framing this as a moral victory by any means. I'm just simply saying, I think Denver was the better team. I think Denver is a special team. They're the defending champs, and they did not have a great series, and yet they still won in 5 games because of their ability to execute in crunch time and execute in third quarters and in second halves, and just the continuity and how special that 5-man grouping is, that starting group of theirs. So a couple things can be true. Like, yes, the Lakers could have done certain things better in this series. Yes, they lost some of the margins, and yes, they should have won game 2. They arguably should have won tonight. And part of that is on certain players. Part of that is on the coaching staff. But I also think that there is no shame in losing to a Denver team that might win the championship and might go back-to-back for the first time since the Warriors did it in 2017 and 2018. But I think, had this been OKC or Minnesota or Dallas or the Clippers, okay, all bets are off. Rip the Lakers, rip everybody involved. This is the end of the world. This is inexcusable. How'd you lose to this team? How'd you lose in 5 games? All that criticism and scrutiny would have been fair. And for most of the series, Denver looked like that caliber of team, or even worse than a lot of those teams, based on how those teams have performed. OKC just swept New Orleans, Minnesota swept Phoenix. But we know the pedigree of the Nuggets. They won 4 of the 5 games. There's no taking that back. And 2 of them might have been on game-winning shots, but a game-winning shot is a game-winning shot. I guess for the Lakers, I think there was honor in winning the play-in game, earning the 7th seed. And as Anthony Davis told me in my series preview, we're not ducking the smoke. And if they beat us, they beat us. And they beat them. And again, the Lakers could have done things better. This probably should have been a longer series based on how well the Lakers played and how poorly Denver played. But when you look at that and you see they led for 70% of the series and they still lost 4-1, you got to just tip your cap to Denver and look at, that's a special team. And this is part of their run right now. And for the Lakers, they need to reevaluate things, probably move on from the coaching position, reload this summer, either in a big way or in a medium way, and then go back next season and make another run at it. And it's going to be tough. LeBron will be turning 40. LeBron will be in year 22. AD will be turning 32 in year 13. And we don't know what's going to be happening with the supporting cast. We don't know what's going to be happening with the coaching staff. But I think in a way, there's something for the Lakers to be proud about, of not ducking the smoke with Denver, giving Denver a really good shot, their best shot for the most part. Again, some things could have been better. Some things could have been different. They shot poorly in free throws. I did mention that. Probably should have mentioned that earlier if you're still listening. But again, I think there's something to be proud about in terms of taking the Denver challenge on head on and giving them a good fight. And leading for 70% of the series only got you 1 win, and it didn't get you the most important thing, which was winning the series. But still, I thought LA was more competitive and impressive than they were last year. I thought they showed growth I thought LeBron and AD were better. And yeah, so this will be the final post-game reaction of the season. I just want to say thank you all so much for supporting my channel, for supporting the show. I will still be producing content all summer, off season long. Now I will have more time to make videos. I will have more time to live stream. I will be going live at least once a week, if not twice. I've really enjoyed going live. I've gotten in trouble a bunch of times going live with certain people and saying certain things maybe I shouldn't be saying, but I'm gonna try and find the proper balance in terms of what I say and getting aggregated and all that stuff. But I just want to say again, like I've really loved this experience over the last few months. I'm addicted to it. I am hungry for more. I am hungry to keep this going. I'm going to keep this going. And I couldn't do it without you guys supporting and downloading and leaving 5-star reviews and liking and commenting. It's been fun and just a really memorable experience so far. And I'm barely 3 months into this. I think I'm 3 days past the 3-month mark. And really with the podcast, I'm not even 2 months into it. So we're just at the beginning. But thank you guys for riding with me. Thank you guys for rocking with me. It's been amazing getting the support, reading the comments, seeing the subscriber count go up, seeing the view count go up. This has all been super fun. I've said this before, but I've wanted to do this for years and I didn't have the guts to do it. And I finally decided in late January, I'm starting it, I'm going for it. And I could not be happier that I did. If anything, I wish that I started it earlier. But like the Lakers season, you can't take it back. You can only learn from your mistakes. And like the Lakers, or hopefully for Laker fans like the Lakers, I, like them, will be learning and growing from this experience. So this is just the beginning. I'm planning to build this out even bigger. I will hopefully get an editor at some point to help me with editing and graphics and different things. I've been a one-man band. On most game nights, I'm adding anywhere from 2 to 3 extra hours in terms of prepping for the podcast, recording the podcast, editing the podcast, and then uploading and distributing the podcast. So it's been a lot of sleepless nights and days. And again, I have nothing but joy and happiness from this experience. And it's been great. And again, it's all for you guys supporting me, watching, viewing, commenting. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, I appreciate it either way. But that'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll be back later in the week with a second show with some of the fallout with some of these things, potentially the firing of Darvin Ham, depending on when that happens. So be on the lookout for that. It will be coming out most likely on Thursday, potentially Friday. I'm going to a wedding this weekend in Mexico City. I'll be leaving Friday morning for that. So I'm not sure if I'll be putting something out Friday. Might end up being Thursday instead, but I will be putting that on social media and on my YouTube channel whenever it is ready. So be on the lookout for that. I'll talk to you then.